Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar today. We're going to give everyone just a few minutes to join us, about 3 minutes until we start the webinar. Thank you. For those of you that just joined us, we're going to give everyone just a minute or two to come on in. We'll be starting in just about a minute or two. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So, thank you all for joining us today. My name is Troy Liljedahl. I'm with Backblase, and I'm here with a great panel of experts to talk about solutions for cybersecurity using the public cloud. We're going to talk about cloud backup best practices here. So we have John Hill and David Gugick here, and we are going to, hopefully give you guys something that you'll be able to implement in your own practice, and help to protect yourself, from the threats that are out there. So just to kind of quickly go over the agenda of what we're going to be talking about today. First, John is going to give us some great information on the current state of cybersecurity. We're going to talk a bit about ransomware and what that looks like, right? What happens if you're actually breached? We're going to kick it over to David at that point to talk to us about MSP 360, how that fits into a cloud backup strategy. And then I'll talk a little bit about Backblaze B2 and some of the ways that Backblaze B2 enables you to protect yourself from ransomware. And then, of course, we're going to have a nice giveaway at the end as well. So make sure you stick around. We're going to give away a Sonos Play 5 to one lucky person here, and then 10 additional lucky attendees will get a copy of John's new book. So with that, John, let me go ahead and turn it over to you.
Well, thanks for the introduction, Troy. I really appreciate being here with you today. As Troy mentioned, I'm John Hill. I'm the CEO for TechSage Solutions. We're a San Antonio-based managed service provider with a cybersecurity first philosophy. And that's why I was really excited to have the opportunity to co-author on this book, because I really believe that cybersecurity risk assessments are critical for every business these days, because the threat landscape is so severe now. And you really have to know where your security gaps are to be able to do something about them. So the risk assessments are really important. We also, as part of that, believe that education is key toward helping not only our team, but our clients and our friends to really be more knowledgeable, more secure. So we do a weekly cybersecurity tips that anyone can sign up for. It's specifically dedicated to that. The email addresses are not shared. And I put the link to that in the attachment section. And then a furtherance of that, about 2 years ago, I started doing a cybersecurity thoughts from the deck. So I sit out on the deck in my backyard and give a cybersecurity tip while drinking a little bit of wine. And everyone seems to enjoy that concept. So I put the link to get to those also in the attachments. So encourage anybody that's interested to go ahead and go to both of those links. Now, over the last 24 months, especially since really the COVID situation has started, cybercrime has gone way, way up. The threat landscape has never been worse than it is right now because it just continues to go up. Cyber attacks are really common. It's very important for especially small business owners to understand what they're up against and how to protect themselves. And that's what we try to do with some of this education. A thing to think about, and this is just for everyone to stimulate some thought, is how many cyber attacks will hit your business today? And if you think none, you're wrong. Virtually every business out there gets hit repeatedly through the day with various threats. How susceptible is your team to enabling and furthering the cyber attack? And that kind of depends on you and what your requirements are. But again, that goes back to the educational aspect of things, because a better educated team member or anyone is less susceptible to falling for some of the attacks that happen. As a scary note, since COVID kicked off, cybercrime has increased actually 600%. And it continues to be a growing problem with more and more hackers coming online and trying to steal your information or basically take your business down. So you really have to be aware of all this these days and take proactive measures against it. So we've got a security challenge ahead of us. And unfortunately, the weakest link in all that continues to be us, be humans, because humans are susceptible to different types of social engineering, for instance, to where the hackers are no longer using just technical methods to try to get into your business. They're going to call someone or they're going to send someone an email and use social engineering to kind of prey on our tendency as humans to want to help, to want to do something that's going to either help our team, help our company, or even help someone else. According to the anti-phishing work group, uh, phishing attacks hit an all-time high first quarter of this year of over 1 million attacks. So just imagine in 30, 60, 90 days, that kind of volume of attacks going on. And it's got to affect all of us. Some statistics to go with that are in 2021, as you can see here on the screen, 61% of attacks use hijacked employee credentials. That means you or your employees have clicked on something, have answered something, have fallen for something that's allowed the attackers to grab your credentials. Usually it's to your company network. And it's known that people use their company network credentials for a lot of other things. So they grab that and it actually goes on a list for sale on the dark web and really makes you vulnerable to a lot of attacks. 94% of the attacks are delivered via email. Email has really always been the biggest threat vector when it comes to delivering cyber attacks. And that continues on. And that's, again, education, teaching your employees, teaching yourself, what to look for and what not to click on. On average, it takes about 120 days to even discover a data breach. All of your major data breaches that have happened over the last several years, when the forensics guys went in there and really investigated, they found that the attacker had been in there a long time, capturing data, capturing anything from, let's say, your QuickBooks credentials for logging in, your bank credentials. And that way, especially in the case of malware, they know how much money you've got. So they know how much money they can levy as your ransom to where you'll do it possibly and maybe do it again. 58%, I'm sorry, of the malware attack victims are small businesses. So small businesses have to be incredibly aware of this because most everyone in small business thinks you're immune, that you're not prey for the hacker, and that's anything but the truth. Unfortunately, this is a really scary statistic. 60% of small to mid-sized businesses that do have a major breach will go out of business within 6 months or most a year. So that's something to be aware of. And then the last stat I've got there is 28% of organizations suffer a breach. That's the ones that had the breach, that survived it, that didn't go out of business. They don't do anything about it. They don't add any security controls or any preventive measures to help keep it from happening again. So it's just a overall a really scary environment out there if you're unaware. But as you get educated on it and become more aware, then you can prevent some of it. Now, who do criminals target for this? Who is the most likely? Well, everybody, pretty much. Victims are individuals, such as each individual on the call today. All businesses, pretty much. Hospitals are a big target right now. We're seeing a lot of attacks on hospitals and a lot of actual breaches because they really don't have the protections they should have in place a lot of times. CPA firms, law firms, engineering firms, any kind of company, especially that has information that could be resellable on the dark web. The channels that it comes in on are, again, email, like I mentioned in the last slide, as the primary vector, but websites that are poisoned, that are compromised to where there's some malware hanging off of something you might want to click on. There was actually a small municipality several years ago that the city manager went to the state comptroller's website to get a document he needed. And when he clicked on it, he got malware because the comptroller's office, actually, their website had been compromised and had some malware hanging off of it that people could get. So it can happen to anyone. And really a key thing too, and you've read about it in the news with China and the suspecting that they have backdoors built into some of their hardware that they've been selling here in the U.S. in the manner of anything from Wi-Fi to switches, routers, any of that stuff. And it could be, we just really don't know until somebody gets in there and analyzes it completely. Used to the biggest attack vector for any of the attacks was Windows. And that's mostly because it was the most prolific thing out there, the most that businesses had. But recently it's really broadened to Linux, to the Apple operating systems, and even to Android devices. It's interesting. Recently, Google removed 13 applications from their Play Store that had been downloaded 500,000 times that were discovered to have malware built into them by security researchers. So it's something that's just nuts out there, and everybody needs to pay attention to it. Now, another thing that a lot of people don't know, some of you on this call may know it, but now a lot of these criminal enterprises have been commoditized to where they're just like a regular startup business. They've got an HR department, they've got a sales department, they have customer support, technical support, and performance guarantees. So they can sell you, for instance, a ransomware as a service attack. And that comes with a guarantee that it's going to affect a certain amount of people. If it don't, you get your money back or you get another attack. They're doing phishing as a service, anything, say, social engineering as a service. Just the list goes on. And it's all set up like a legitimate business with all the support that a legitimate business would have. It's just they're not bound to following the law like the rest of us are. But this dark web marketplace that people can go to buy these exploits, social engineering hacking that they can actually contract with someone that's an expert at doing that to do it for them, credential scraping, contaminated emails, the list goes on and on. There's just so many ways that it can be done now, all in that type of a legitimate business environment. Now, the silent killer that we're talking about here is ransomware, because even though it's been reported that $6 trillion in ransomware payments were made in 2021, and this is worldwide, it's not just your town or here in the States even, but it's vastly underreported because most businesses, if they can avoid reporting it, do. They don't want the stigma that's attached to having succumb to a ransomware attack. They can affect anybody, like Colonial Pipeline was a good, for instance. JBS Foods were attacked, and that really impacted critical infrastructure in the Colonial Pipeline instance, all rather than using tanks or bombs or any kind of physical threat, by using a ransomware attack, a virtual threat. Targeting these IT systems for critical infrastructure is become a way that the foreign governments are attacking other governments. And I think we've heard some of that when dealing with the Ukraine and the situation over there, and some of the things that have happened. So it's a very prolific environment as far as the bad guys go, and the things that they're doing, and the ways that they're actually impacting all of us. Because when someone large especially gets attacked, that really affects everyone, and everyone in business. So what happens with a breach? It's a lot of things, especially in the ransomware case, which is the most obvious one. But files and systems are locked, where companies can't get to their data, or individuals. Files or systems are encrypted. The victim usually has a 72-hour window to pay the ransom, or they say they'll either delete the files, they'll put them for sale on the dark web, they'll do any number of things to where you don't have access to that data unless you've got protections in place. So those obvious things aren't the entire picture, though, because with any of this type of thing, you've got reputational damage. If you get ransomed, or you get attacked in some way, and haven't been protected for it, then customers or associates or potential investors might not want to work with you. Theft, they can steal any type of monetary things, from your bank account, from the ransom itself, or just the stolen data is a lot more important. So data is the key monetary thing these days, is the buying and selling of data. Financial losses, the financial losses of getting attacked are dramatic, because you've not only got to pay for the recovery and getting that data back when possible, you just got a tremendous amount of other components to go into the loss. You get fines quite often. There's fines nowadays for getting attacked. If you've got, for instance, cyber insurance, and you've told the insurance company that you've got protection against this, and you do get attacked and compromised, they might decline a claim because you haven't done it the way they wanted it done. And then below the surface costs, or any kind of economic costs that result from an incident. Operational disruption, because if you get attacked, your systems get taken down, you're going to potentially lose business as a result of just not being able to fulfill contracts or fulfill the things that you need to fulfill. And then creates cash flow issues, because it costs a lot of money to fix, and increase insurance premium. So, there's just a ton of that, and education is a key, like I've said before, and awareness, and just being knowledgeable and suspicious. I'm suspicious of every email I get. I don't click on anything pretty much these days, just because, and we've got tons of protection in place to protect against it. So now, after sharing all this doom and gloom with you, I'm going to hand it over to David so he can discuss some ways that you can protect yourself from these bad guys. David, take it away.
Yeah, all right. Thank you, John. All right, let me get past this title slide. So John talked a lot about this state of cybersecurity, and it's pretty scary out there, at least, from my personal view. Things have changed a lot. I think even for people that just, not even at work, we're getting text messages that are spam, designed to get you to click on things. We get phone calls every day that are being blocked, hopefully by your phone company. Tons of emails show up in the spam folders. It's constant, and it's a problem for personal use, but it's even a bigger problem for businesses or MSPs, managed services, looking to protect your customers. So What I want to talk about is really what you can do to best prepare for a recovery from a ransomware attack. Some of you have probably experienced. We're going to have some polls later on. You may have experienced an attack, and you know that it's not a matter of if, but when you'll have to recover one of your customers from a cybersecurity incident like ransomware. So let's concentrate and talk about some of the things that you can do to make for a successful recovery for your business or for your customers if you're in managed services. I just want to briefly touch on the NIST or NIST, depending on how you pronounce it, a cybersecurity framework. The National Institute of Standards and Technology is a government agency in the United States, and they put together a ton of free resources. I have 3 slides at the end that'll be available to all attendees and those of you who watch later on, with links to read about all of this free, great information that the government is putting together to protect not only government agencies and the partners they work with, but businesses in general. And the whole goal of it is it's a framework really to better manage and reduce your risk, your cybersecurity risk. It's voluntary guidance, which means you don't have to do everything in there, not a hard set of instructions that you have to follow. So you can take away from it, really, from the framework, what works for you. And traditionally, there's a lot of information in it, and people talk about the identify and protect phase. That's obviously very important. But I think I'm going to focus a little bit more today on the respond and recovery. And I won't go too much into these sections of NIST. I think you can read over it. There's some great resources at the end that you'll be able to see. So let's move on to the next slide, creating the cyber incident response plan and really your team, right? So this is what you need to do to prepare for a cybersecurity incident. Do this for your MSP to protect the MSP's assets, your data center. Do this for each customer. It sounds like something out of a TV show, creating a CERT, your cyber incidents response team. It's not that sophisticated, but it's important that you do it. So what is it really? These are going to be the key players, along with things like their roles and responsibilities that will respond to an incident when it happens. If you're a small MSP, it might be most employees, or a subset if you're larger. You'll want to identify which members of the CERT have the authority to act and how to contact them 24/7. So if somebody is on, the backup and recovery team, you'll need to make sure you know how to reach them by phone and have replacements in place in case somebody's on vacation. So put this contact list together along with all of your partners. These are the cybersecurity vendors, your service providers that do backup and RMM, your equipment vendors that are, managing the equipment, ransomware decryptor sites. I got some links that you can use at the end if you're looking for your own decryption methods to resolve a ransomware incident. So identify each person on the team and who's authorized to engage which service. If you're using MSP 360, figure out who's going to reach out to us and say, we have a problem, we're going to need your help. We need some guidance here. Also, compile key documentation for each of your customers as well as the MSP. These are the critical business networks and systems that are in place. It's important because you need to be able to know how to remove access, to prevent spread, to provide temporary access to a cyber incident response team if they're looking to resolve something. So you need to understand how to operate all these environments and where they are. And every customer is probably going to be a little bit different. Your incident reporting requirements, this is going to depend on the type or severity of the incident, the type of business you are, who your customers are, but you may be required to report to regulatory agencies, whether it's state or federal level, or if you're in a different country, whatever regulations are out there. Government officials, the FBI, if you're in the United States, customers of your customer, you might have to help your customer reach out to their customers. Insurance providers, and other third parties. So it's important to outline all the reporting requirements, not only for your MSP, but also for all of the customers that you work with. Your technical response procedures are really just a documentation that's going to instruct you and your team about how to investigate, contain, eradicate, and recover from an incident. And that's really kind of like a broad set of procedures for each of the things that you'll be dealing with, whether it's, recovering from an operating system, by rebuilding it, whether it's restoring key data, relational databases, whatever it is. If you are working with lawyers, you may have legal response procedures. So you should be coordinating everything with your legal team. If you don't have a legal team, it may be something you want to look into. There are methods for getting access to lawyers that, don't require a lot of cost for the MSP. So definitely look at a legal team, and so you can have some guidance from a legal perspective about what you need to do. And then you really need to exercise these plans, train your staff, and update the plans regularly. This is important because if you don't practice, you're not going to know what to do. And if you don't update these steps annually when things like services change or new employees are onboarded, then you're just going to be in a position where it's 2 a.m. on a Saturday night and a customer is under attack and you're struggling to figure out who to call and how to resolve that incident. So you want to have everything prepared in advance. Now, John talked about this a lot, about what's happening with breaches. There's statistics all over the place and all of them are bad. So here you can see, some stat that I have from a recent survey. This year was 88% of all breaches are caused by employee mistakes and distractions, especially when they're working from home. So it's important that these customers are trained, and it may allow you to generate additional revenue by providing this cybersecurity awareness training to them. Now, there is a poll question. So Troy, can you help me out and get that first poll started?
Absolutely.
So there is a poll question there. Are you delivering cybersecurity awareness training to your customers? Now, we'd love everybody just to take a second to go in there and put the answer in that best fits your business or your MSP, so we can have a better idea. And then we'll after this slide, we'll go back and look at those results. But if your customers or you are looking to get cyber insurance, there's probably going to be a requirement in there that you have phishing and security awareness training. And this may be something you've had to deal with if you're working for a larger company who conducts this type of training either annually or when they onboard new employees. So you're going to want to conduct regular scheduled training with your customers or internally for cybersecurity awareness. There's a lot of spear phishing going on. This is very targeted phishing attacks that may use terminology that's specific to the business or using names that are available in the business. So it appears more like the request is coming from a true and authenticated source, when in fact it's not. So it's important to be able to identify those attacks before they're answered or before critical information is released. That training can happen, video training. It can happen for new employees as well as existing employees on an annual basis, or as kind of like the cybersecurity landscape changes. You probably want to look at conducting organization-wide phishing tests. There are free tools out there that will allow you to do this, as well as paid tools that can help you do phishing tests. I know employees hate them, but I think they're very educational. So consider using one of the free tools to really try to trick employees into clicking on something they shouldn't. Now, the goal is not to call somebody out. The goal is not to fire somebody. It's all about education. And while I've seen a lot of companies do organization-wide phishing tests, many times they announce for some reason in advance that there will be some kind of phishing tests going on. So employees are kind of geared up to looking for them. I don't think that's a good idea. Unless you're required to for some reason legally, I would say don't advise anybody in advance that these are going to be going on. Try to trick them because it may expose some areas where you need additional training. And as I said, the goal is not to shame anyone for clicking on something. It's all about education. Password and credential management. This is an area that I see that everybody seems to struggle with. Now, most of us in IT try to do a good job. We use credential databases. We subscribe to a service or use something locally like KeyPass, which is a favorite among a lot of people because there is no cloud integration. These are secure password safes, password databases that are accessed through a long master password. But I've seen what my friends do, especially those not in IT. The Post-it note password management solution is still alive and well. I see it all the time. And it's terrible, obviously. So provide your customers with the means so they can easily manage their passwords. Don't tell them just to remember them. because nobody wants to remember them. And when people have to remember their passwords, it means they're going to be using the same passwords across multiple services, or the passwords are not going to be strong enough, and passwords need to be lengthy, right? And there are ways to make that easier for people if they want to remember them by using passphrases rather than randomly generated, alphanumeric and symbols. But a password safe can go a long way to not having to remember what your passwords are. Work laptops. Work laptops are for work. I always say eliminate personal use on work laptops, but I also know that that's probably not reasonable. I know for a lot of people that I am friends with, they don't bother buying home computers because they work for companies that supply them pretty good laptops to use, and they end up using it for personal use. But there need to be some restrictions and some protections in place, especially if they're working from home. Because anything they pick up at home can be easily brought into the office, or if they connect to the office through a VPN if they're remote. So it's important to make sure that those laptops are well protected, and the activities that they're performing on those laptops are restricted in some manner. I hear a lot of MSPs that we work talk about all of the home work that's going on in home network routers, which tend to be a problem for a lot of MSPs in terms of maintaining cybersecurity, good stature with their cybersecurity protection. A lot of customers are working from home. They have poorly configured home networks and routers and bad wireless security because maybe they haven't changed it in 5 years. So it's important if you're in managed services, for helping your customers who are going to be working from home, making sure that the routers are configured correctly, making sure things like universal plug and play are off, that remote router administration is disabled, that they're using the right DNS servers or the ones that you prefer, and doing things like ensuring the router firmware is updated and that the routers are still under support. The last thing you want to be doing from home is using a router that's no longer supported by the vendor, which means you're not getting security updates to the firmware. And that's a problem, because if you just read the reports all the time, there'll be a whole family of routers that have, a vulnerability exposed. Sometimes they're even 0 days, and you have to really wait for that firmware to be updated. But if they're not supported, they're likely to never be updated. So it's important to get them out of homes if possible. And then also important for employees to know how to report suspicious emails or phone calls or any type of activity, rather than just ignoring it. We want your customers or your employees to reach out to the help desk anytime they're worried about something. Better to be safe than sorry. So make sure they know how to report it, rather than somebody just being smart and ignoring it. Because if an email comes in and it's spam and they don't report it, then there's no way to block the email address or change the rules around emails coming in to look for that particular type of spam. So make sure they know what they're doing.
So, David,
All right, now we get to
have
the backup side. And oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
we do have the poll results if you wanted to take a look at those.
Yes. So I'm going to click on it. All right. So the question was, are you delivering cybersecurity awareness training to your customers? And I think the good news from the folks on this webinar, that half of you are delivering them yourselves and 20% are outsourcing it. So that's 70% are delivering, I think, what everybody believes needs to be done. 10% of you are looking to add it in the next 3 to 6 months. 20% are not doing it right now. Now, there may be a good reason that you're not doing it. Maybe you actually don't need it. But like we said, it's always something to look into. It's better to have some training than none at all. Like I said, you don't have to do everything. You can do what's appropriate for your business and the type of services that your employees or customers are using. So I think I like what those poll results say. It makes me happy to see that 70% out there are actually doing training, which I think is important. All right, so thanks for answering that. So back on the backup side, and obviously restores, right? Because we don't back up for backup's sake, we back up so you can restore. So what should you be doing? Well, one thing you should be doing is backing up to 2 locations. We always talk about like the 3-2-1 backup policy. This thing predates, probably me being born and I've heard it my entire career. Keep 3 copies of customer data, the live data, and 2 backup copies, with one of those backup copies offsite. Traditionally, they used to be tape. We don't work with too many customers anymore that have tape infrastructure or want to hire companies to pick up those tapes at night and drive them off site. The public cloud is really the next best thing for the last decade or so. And that's a way to get your data offsite, somewhat air gap from your local network. So we know that a lot of ransomware variants, they're smarter these days, like John was talking about. They do not encrypt your local data immediately and tell you, hey, pay the ransom. They look around the network. They inspect. They look for whatever data they can grab. They exfiltrate that data because there's no longer hey, your local data is encrypted, pay us to get it back. Now it's, we have your data, we're holding it ransom. If you don't pay the ransom, we're going to release it. So anything on a network share, it may be at risk. And that's a problem if that's your only backup copy. So make sure you protect those backups by having at least one copy offsite in the public cloud. Use features like cloud immutability or object lock, as they're sometimes called, the clouds. This is sort of like a time mechanism on a safe at a bank, right? This feature locks down the backups by preventing deletion before a certain date time that the software can work with. That means should a disgruntled employee or a hacker or some type of smart malware like ransomware try to access your cloud storage and successfully access it, they will not be able to delete that data because it is locked down until some future date way out. So use those features to protect that cloud data even further. But also talk to your customers about their RPOs and RTOs. Your RPOs are your restore point objectives. Your RTOs are your restore time objectives. These two concepts need to be discussed less technically, often with your customers, right? To decide on what services are right for them and the types of backups you're going to need to run to protect them. If they tell you, so if you're talking about things like RPOs, your restore point objective, if your customer tells you, for instance, that they have a relational database that's very busy in collecting data and they can't afford to lose more than 15 minutes of data. Otherwise, it impacts the business too greatly to re-enter more than that. That means you're running transaction log backups every 15 minutes. If they say we can lose 4 hours worth of file data because our employees can recreate that easily, then maybe you're looking at every 4 hour incremental backups of files that employees are working on. The RTO, your restore time objectives, tells you, the IT department or the MSP, how quickly the customer needs to be up and running when a restore is needed before that delay negatively impacts their business. And that's going to help you decide actually what services you're going to be using, really which vendors you're going to be working with to get those systems up and running. If they need to be up and running in 10 minutes, and when a server goes down, that may push you towards one service. If they say, we have a little bit more time to wait, that may push you to another service. And using the right service is not only going to make your customers happy because you'll be able to meet those SLAs, but could save you money if you don't need to use an overpriced service for a particular customer who says, you know what, I can be out for 6 hours. It's not a big deal. Maybe you don't need to be using a solution that can restore their environment in 10 minutes. It's entirely up to you. So there's maybe some cost savings for you if you're in managed services. Regularly test your backups and restores. Ensure your backups are where they need to be and they can be used for restores. This may be a manual process or maybe some automation built into the backup services that you use. And document everything. I always tell customers, do not rely on vendor documentation. We write it up, as a vendor, I can tell you we write it up as detailed as possible, but it's going to be kind of in our own voice and it may not be exactly what you need. And the last thing you want to be doing at restore time is reading vendor documentation, not really understanding what we're saying and having to reach out to support during a critical time where you really need to be kicking off a restore operation. So read over it, practice all your types of restores that you need to do, document it yourself. A lot of it might be copy and paste from the vendor, but put in your own notes. It'll get you through a restore much more quickly if you write up these procedures yourself and get them out to the CERT, to your cyber incident response team. So I do have another poll in there in the polls. So Troy, could you start up that second poll? And that is, have you had to recover from a ransomware attack? We're just kind of curious who's run into this. Maybe you personally as an MSP, maybe one of your customers, maybe you did it at home. It doesn't really matter. We just like to know what percentage of customers, at least on the webcast right now, have run into that. And while you answer that, I'll just wrap up with the next slide, which is just very quickly about remediation. Then I'm going to turn it over to Troy. So remediation, and this is a slide with a lot of stuff that's that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. But remediation is really kind of identifying which endpoints at a customer or internally are affected. You want to consider backing up any affected systems to avoid removing evidence, especially if you're going to need this evidence for further analysis, either by your IT team, by an outsourced cybersecurity, team or person that you're hiring, law enforcement, security analysts, whatever it is. Sometimes backing up those systems to keep a copy of them is going to be important for identifying what's going on, especially if you're in a position where you have to restore that system quickly. You may want to back it up first, or at least make sure you have some backups of some of the damage, so you can use that later on for understanding maybe what kind of malware you were hit by. Identify your compromised accounts and disable them. Turn off your infected machines, or really everything if you're not sure until you have a better idea. But you're going to know based on the documentation that you created earlier that we talked about how to get that environment up and running, which machines need to be turned on and checked and restored, and in what order in order to get that customer up and running again. Do things like restore your data. And then when it's all said and done, when you've gone through it and it's all done, perform a root cause analysis. This is your postmortem. This is where everybody sits down and they talk about what went right, but maybe more importantly, what went wrong? What could have gone better? Did the restore take too long? Were needed personnel on the cert unavailable? Whatever the case is, did you need to access new websites? Did you have a new service in there that you didn't adequately document? Doesn't matter what it is. This is the learning process, right? You or your customer are back up and running. Don't waste the opportunity having to go through a whole remediation and restore from some type of attack like ransomware without learning from it. So let's pop over to the poll again and see what people say. 36%, it looks like, of the folks just on this webinar have had a recovery, have been hit by ransomware, and the recovery went well. 9% said it was somewhat problematic, which means just some adjustments to that restore process will get them into that first category, meaning 45% are ready to go. 9% said it was problematic. Again, that is a learning process. And 45% are lucky enough, with their fingers crossed, that they haven't had a customer who is hit yet. And we often say, maybe you will be lucky. Maybe you will be the lucky one to go through your entire career without having to deal with it. I think it's unlikely, but I hope for the best for all of you, that you never have to go through it, or if you've gone through it, you don't have to go through it again. So I'm going to turn it over now to Troy, who's going to tell you all about Backblase B2. And then I'll come back and tell you a little bit more about the MSP 360 portfolio, which I kind of wanted to be at the end, so I didn't talk really product stuff too much. But I'll turn it over to Troy. All you.
Awesome. Thank you, David. I'm looking forward to the new series, CIST, the follow-up to NCIS and CSI, right? Awesome. So I think, John and David, told us some very alarming things, but some hopeful things as well, right? I think understanding how to keep our organizations prepared and to be able to prevent and recover ourselves from a ransomware attack is really, really important. And I think the key thing to take away from this is not if, but when, right? Obviously, we think that having a secure offsite backup is a really important part of that strategy to be able to recover from a ransomware attack effectively and easily. With Backblase, you have a lot of different options out there with the public cloud, right? But we think Backblase is just a great option for users that are looking to have that offsite part of their backup strategy, have it protected from ransomware. And there's a few key reasons for that. First, Backblase is very simple. You may have seen some of our marketing taglines, but we call ourselves the astonishingly easy storage cloud. compared to some of the other options that are out there, Backblaze is really, really, really easy to use. You know, most companies don't have a hard time onboarding us. There's no, money have to spend on training or certification or anything like that. It's very, hey, let's sign up and get going in a couple minutes, and you're ready to go with a solution like MSP 360. Which also means there's less places for user error. Some of our competitors offer a wide variety of services, right? And if you don't know what you're doing, you may click on the wrong thing and cause some issues for your organization. Speaking of companies that do many things, you may feel conflicted about using a larger monolithic organization for your cloud backups. With Backblaze, we do one thing, and that's cloud storage. We don't have a retail shop. We don't make hardware or any of those kinds of things. We just want to make the simplest option for users to be able to store their data in the cloud. And then cost is the kind of the other thing, right? There's a lot of hidden costs with some of the other cloud providers that may come to mind, right? A lot of sticker shock. There are businesses out there that make their living off of telling you what your cloud costs will be, and we think that shouldn't be necessary. So we try to be very upfront with our pricing. We have a CapEx and OpEx model for pricing. We try to make you not make you have to make trade-offs to be secure in the cloud. Backblaze B2 Cloud Storage should be just an easy option to add that offsite protection, so you're protected against ransomware or some kind of attack. It talked about kind of some of the other guys, but what does Backblaze do, right? We are very easy to use. Like I said, you can get signed up for a Backblaze account in a few minutes and start backing up to it securely and safely. Beyond just our ability to work with great solutions like MSP 360, we have a full suite of APIs. We have an S3 compatible API. So anything that works with the S3 storage will work with Backblaze as well, right? We also have our own CLI. We have a web UI, thousands of integrations, all things that should be, really easy to get set up and going. Chances are, if you're using a tool that works with cloud storage in some way, it's going to work with Backblaze as well. And it should, hopefully that's not something that requires your team to get trained. It's simply a matter of going to our website, signing up, and getting going. We're also tech stack agnostic. So, we don't do any kind of vendor lock-in. Again, like some of our competitors, you get kind of caught in this bubble of web services, right? For the companies that offer things like storage, CDN, compute, right? It's very easy to move within those bubbles. But once you want to get outside of it and do something else, it's typically very expensive to do so. And we are agnostic to partners. We have, a bevy of partners that we offer things like free egress to, and all that information is available on our website. As far as things like our SLAs, our availability, our durability, we offer 11 nines of durability. We have the same SLA as some of the big boys in cloud storage, 99.9%. And we've been around just a year less than AWS has been a thing. So we do know our way in the cloud storage space. And then again, with the cost, we are very affordable. We don't have any tiers of storage. So if you're used to like saying, oh, I want to have this cloud storage option to protect against ransomware, but I can really only afford to put it in some kind of cold storage, right? And then if I need to get the data out, I'm going to have to pay a lot if I need it right away, right? And that goes back to the RTO that David was talking about, right? What is your RTO objectives? If you have an RTO objective of, a few hours, something like cold storage may not be an option for you, despite, the affordability to store it there, because you're not going to be able to afford to get it out, or you just may not be able to get it out in the time that you need it. With Backblaze, it's single tier. Your data is always immediately available. So, we say hot at predictable cold rates, right? Once you ask for a file, you get it immediately. There's no charge to get it faster or anything like that. We also don't have any minimum penalties. So we don't have any minimum level of retention. So, if your recovery point objective is, say, 30 days, right? we're only going to charge you for the time that you keep that data within Backblaze. Once that backup ages out after 30 days and it gets deleted from object storage in B2, we're not going to charge you for that any longer. You stop getting charged for it immediately once it's deleted. Some of our competitors do have things like, minimum retention periods, and we don't do that. We don't have any hidden fees or limits, right? There's no, everything is very simple. We have our one cost for storage, and there's a download cost. There are API costs as well, which is all documented in our pricing. However, those are really meant to deter bad actors more so than people who are trying to legitimately use the service. And the majority of users who get charged API charges, it's fractions of a penny, since you get several thousands of those API calls free every day. And all that is documented on our website. We're very upfront about it, and there are no charges outside of that. So talked about us being a secure solution and a great place to have that third copy in the cloud to protect against ransomware. But what happens if a bad actor, a bad guy, right? I think as John called them, the bad guys, what if they get your credentials to the cloud, right? Or what if someone makes a mistake and thinks, hey, it's okay to delete this backup now, right? User error is a big thing as well. So Backblaze has a technology called Object Lock. And Object Lock, as David mentioned kind of briefly, allows you to get this kind of worm model. You may have heard this term worm, right? Write once, read many, which means that once it's written into Backblaze, it cannot be deleted until that lock expires. And solutions like MSP360 natively support this Object Lock technology. So what this means is literally no one can go in and do anything to your backup that's in the cloud until that lock expires. A bad actor, someone making a mistake, maybe a bad line of code, it doesn't matter. When it tries to delete it, it fails. And there is no way to make it succeed. You could be phished, you could be scammed. Backblaze, if you're taking advantage of Object Lock to get this immutable backup in the cloud, nothing's going to happen to your data. So in the event of an attack, of a failure, you're going to be able to easily and quickly get back the files that you need. So I think that's what I got for right now.
That's good stuff.
Yeah. So David, I think you want to talk a little product with
I want to spend just like a minute on the next 3-4 slides, and then we're going to get to the giveaway. By the way, if anybody has any questions, there is a little question mark in your Bright Talk panel on the right. Feel free to ask whatever you want, and then we'll do the giveaway. Just wanted to mention very quickly, for those of you that may or may not be familiar with MSP360, we have a whole platform that's available to our customers to do manage backups. You can manage either internally if you're a business, or your customers if you're an MSP, all of their backup needs, as well as remote monitoring and management now we have in the portfolio, as well as our secure remote desktop, which is our Connect product. We've recently integrated, you can see over to the right, Deep Instinct. Deep Instinct is our new endpoint security solution through a partnership with Deep Instinct, which is the company name. Deep Instinct is used by big corporations all over the world. It's very unique in what it does, and it implements a prevention-first approach to threat detection. It's an automated, lightweight technology. It uses really the world's first and only deep learning cybersecurity solution with protection against 0 days that are greater than 99% compared to industry averages of 50 to 70. With far fewer, 10 times or more, fewer false positives. It's an amazing technology that we are bringing to the MSP360 community, which is a great thing to have, because traditionally, if you wanted Deep Instinct, you'd have to be a big company with a lot of endpoints. And now that's no longer the case. All you need to do is use our managed backup or our RMM solution, and then you have the opportunity to get into Deep Instinct at a very low cost. So head over to msp360.com for more information. Hit up the Backblaze partner page if you want. If you have any questions or need a private demo, we can do that for you. That's all I want to say about the portfolio. I mentioned there's going to be a bunch of slides at the end. I'm not going to go through them, just let you know what they are, so you can screenshot them now or look at them later. Useful links, just to free stuff. This is about the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. This is also another U.S. government agency, as well as NIST. Some great links there and articles that you can read. The next part is just about free and paid attack simulation training phishing simulators. There's some free options out there, even with Office 365 now, if you're using that, as well as some others that you may want to look at. And the last thing is ransomware decryptors. There are some that are out there, but obviously things change. Not everything can be decrypted. And the goal obviously is to not get infected in the first place. But if you do want to start compiling a list of websites that have some decryptors available, this may give you a start on what's out there. We haven't vetted all the sites, but they look pretty good when I was doing some review. Okay, so whoops, I skipped the John slide. All right, so we are going to do the giveaway now. I think Troy is going to announce who the winner of the Sonos 5 is, and we're not going to announce every winner of the books, but there are 10 lucky winners out there, and we are going to send you emails and get those books out to you. So I'll leave it to you, Troy, to announce the winner.
Absolutely. So our lucky winner of the Sonos Play 5 is Salim Tahiri. No, I'm sorry, David, you didn't win. Salim, congratulations.
I never won.
We'll reach out via email and figure out where you'd like that sent. And then, as David mentioned, another 10 of you are going to get John's new book, Why Your Business Must Have Cybersecurity Risk Assessments. And we'll be reaching out via email to find out where you'd like that sent. So congratulations to Salim and everyone else. I think that kind of wraps us up here. Again, thank you again to John. Thank you to David. Appreciate taking the time to come here, educate us on, how to protect ourselves, what to look for, what the risks are, and ultimately help us get to a place where we can feel, more secure about our place in the digital world, and being confident we can protect ourselves from some of the bad guys out there.
Great, thanks, Troy. Great to be here. Love doing these educational webinars.
Yeah, thanks, Troy and David. I enjoyed it.
All right, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.